He played the game of his life. Every header, every block, every clearance. For 120 minutes, Gabriel Magalhaes was the best player on that pitch. And then Arteta asked him to take the most important penalty Arsenal have ever had. Think about that. The man who threw himself in front of everything, who made 8 clearances in the first half alone, who was running on pure will by the time extra time came around. That man walked up to the spot, and he missed, and people are calling it heartbreak. But I need you to stay with me here, because this wasn't just heartbreak. This was something more specific, something more uncomfortable. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why Arsenal lost that final, and it wasn't because of a penalty miss. Right, I'm Amelia. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is where we actually think about Arsenal, not react. Think. Subscribe if that's what you're looking for. And before we go any further, drop a comment right now. One word. How did you feel when Gabriel's penalty went over? One word. I want to see it. Because I think what we all felt in that moment said everything about this football club, about where we are, about what this team means to people. But feelings aren't enough. Let's talk about what actually happened. I've watched the match back. And I want to be honest with you about something. Arsenal were not outplayed in that final. They weren't dominated. They weren't dismantled. They scored first. They defended with everything they had. And for long stretches of that game, PSG, the team that had won the Champions League last season, the team with Kvaratskhelia and Dembele and Barcola, were frustrated. So why does it feel like a disaster? That's the question I kept asking myself. And I think the answer is this. Arsenal didn't lose because they were worse. They lost because of 3 very specific moments, 3 decisions, 3 fault lines. And here's what I need you to understand. Only one of those was a penalty miss. Let me start with the moment nobody is talking about enough. Christian Mosquera. Now, in the first half, Mosquera was sensational. I want to be fair to him because the narrative is already shifting towards he cost us the final. And I think that's too simple. He was winning duels against Kvaratskhelia, against one of the best dribblers in European football. He was calm on the ball. He was composed. He was, and this is the honest truth, everything you'd want from someone filling in at centre-back in a Champions League final. And then, one moment, one rash, unnecessary, completely avoidable foul. Kvaratskhelia doesn't even need to go down particularly easily. It's a hack, it's panicked, and it's a penalty. Now here's what I keep thinking about. Arsenal were 1-0 up at that point. Havertz had scored in the 6th minute. That beautiful run, that cool finish, the roof of the net. Arsenal had the lead. The plan was working, and Mosquera, who had been excellent, just snapped. Why? I think it's the pressure. I think it's the occasion. I think that in a normal league game, he makes a different decision. He backs off, he shows the attacker outside, he stays on his feet. But this was a Champions League final. And the brain, under that kind of pressure, does strange things. Now here's where I want to challenge something. Because people are going to say, why was Mosquera on the pitch at all? Why wasn't Timber starting? And that's a fair question, but I'm not going to spend too long on that because Mosquera was playing well before the foul. The selection wasn't the issue. The decision in the moment was. But here's what makes it so damaging. Without that penalty, without Dembele's equalizer, Arsenal almost certainly win that final in normal time. Think about that scenario. You're 1-0 up with 20 minutes to go. PSG haven't really threatened. Your defenders are holding. You run the clock down. Arsenal were 1 foul away from winning the Champions League in 90 minutes. 1 foul. And instead, we went to extra time. And then penalties. And then we all watched Gabriel walk up to the spot. But wait, because I'm not even at the most important moment yet. Let me tell you about the moment that is going to haunt this final for a generation of Arsenal fans. Extra time. Noni Madueke is on the pitch. And if you haven't seen it, Madueke had been electric since coming on. Direct. Brave. Getting at Mendes down that right channel and causing real problems. And then it happened. He gets into the box. He's brought down. It is, and I want to be careful here because I want to be precise, not just emotional. It is a penalty. Contact. Inside the area. Player going to ground. Waved away. The referee didn't even go to VAR. Now, I know football is emotional. I know we all see things differently when it involves our team. So I'm trying to be as objective as I can here. But the match reporter at the Puskas Arena, who has no reason to be biased, called it a huge shout waved away. Madueke himself was furious. The entire Arsenal bench reacted. And I keep asking myself, in a Champions League final with VAR available, why does that not get checked? Why? Because if that penalty is given, and I believe it should have been, Arsenal win in extra time. Against 10 or 11 tired PSG players, Madueke wins it. We are not talking about Gabriel's miss. We are not questioning Arteta's penalty list. We are talking about Madueke lifting the Champions League. And that's what makes this so hard to process, because Arsenal fans know what happened. They felt it in real time. That was the moment. That was the real turning point. And it was just taken away. But here's the problem, and this is where I have to be honest with myself too. Even after everything I've just said, Mosquera's foul, the Madueke denial, Arsenal still had a chance. They were in the shootout, and they had the opportunity to make all of it irrelevant. And this is where I have to talk about the penalty order, because I think this is the most uncomfortable conversation for Arsenal fans to have right now. Let me walk you through what happened. PSG went first. Ramos scored. Then Gyökeres, Arsenal's first, scored. Doué for PSG scored. Then Eze stepped up. Eze, who had been on the pitch for less than 30 minutes, and he dragged it wide. Then Rice scored. Then Raya saved brilliantly from Mendes. Then Martinelli scored. Then Hakimi scored. Then it was Gabriel, a centre-back, asked to score or Arsenal lose the Champions League final. And I'm not going to pretend I didn't see what I saw. Eze missed. Gabriel missed. Saka, the player who has been our most consistent performer, the player who is built for these moments, the player who takes penalties regularly, was not in the first five. I need to be careful here because I don't have the full picture. I don't know if Saka volunteered. I don't know if there was an injury concern. I don't know the conversation that happened before those kicks were taken. But from the outside, and from what we all watched, the penalty order looked wrong. And this is where I'm going to say something that I think needs to be said. Arteta has to answer for this. Not because I don't believe in him. I do. I think he has built something genuinely special at Arsenal. But the penalty preparation in a Champions League final is the manager's responsibility. That list doesn't get written without his input. Those conversations don't happen without him. And when Eze, who had barely touched the ball, steps up before established penalty takers when Gabriel, a defender, is carrying the entire weight of the moment at the end, that is a coaching decision. That is on Arteta. Now, I want to be balanced. I want to think about this from every angle. Maybe the logic was that your most reliable penalty takers go in positions 2, 3, 4, so you never need your number 5 if the first 4 all score. Maybe Eze volunteered and Arteta trusted him. Maybe Saka simply said he didn't want to take one and we just don't know that yet. But the result is what the result is. And in the cold light of the morning after, Arsenal's penalty preparation in the biggest game of this generation did not look like a plan. It looked like a scramble. Now think about this. We are talking about Gabriel crying on the pitch. We are talking about Madueke's penalty being waved away. We are talking about Eze pulling one wide and Saka not being in the first 5. But underneath all of it, underneath every single one of these conversations, there is one bigger question. Is this squad capable of winning the biggest moments? And I don't mean that as an attack. I mean it as a genuine question, because the evidence is complicated. They won the Premier League. That is not nothing. That is a huge achievement. That requires consistency, mentality, quality over 38 games and an entire season. But in the single biggest 90 minutes of their careers, in the final that would have defined the Arteta era, they didn't win. And I think about the pattern. This is a squad with enormous talent. Saka, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Martinelli. These are world-class players. This is a system that has been refined over years. This is a manager who is tactically very, very good. But there are big moments where something switches off, where the brain seems to go somewhere else, where the composure that makes Arsenal so good during the season just isn't there. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe I'm seeing a pattern that isn't there, but I don't think I am. Because Arteta's record in these high-stakes single games, not seasons, not campaigns, but specific 90-minute moments, has questions around it. And this final is the latest entry in that conversation. Here's where I want to get into something deeper, because I think we are missing the real issue. The conversation after this final is going to be about Gabriel's miss, about the penalty order, about the referee, and all of those conversations are valid. But I think the real issue is about preparation. Mental preparation, shootout preparation, Big game preparation. The physical quality at Arsenal is not in question. The tactical quality, no, for the most part, is not in question. Gabriel was extraordinary for 120 minutes. Hincapié was heroic. Havertz led the line brilliantly on his own. But when the game moves into the territory where football becomes psychology, where it's about who wants it more, who handles the pressure better, who has rehearsed the exact scenario you're facing, I'm not sure Arsenal are where they need to be yet. And here's what I mean by that. Penalty shootouts can be prepared for, seriously prepared for. Data on goalkeepers' tendencies, data on your own players' confidence levels, run-up speeds, eye contact. Breathing techniques. Some clubs have entire departments dedicated to this. And I'm not saying Arsenal don't do this. I genuinely don't know what their preparation looked like. But the penalty order suggested to me that it wasn't fully locked in, because you don't put a player who has been on for 30 minutes in the top 5 unless you have either lost your first choice options to exhaustion or you didn't have a clear plan to begin with. That's the uncomfortable truth. Let me tell you what I think needs to happen now. This summer is going to be one of the most important summers in this club's recent history. Not because of who they buy, but because of who they become. The squad has the quality, the manager has the vision, the infrastructure is there. But something needs to shift in terms of how this team handles the pressure of the absolute biggest moments, whether that's psychology staff, whether that's bringing in players who have won at this level, whether it's Arteta evolving his approach in these final moments of games. I don't know exactly what the solution looks like, but I know it has to change, because right now Arsenal have proved they can compete with the best in Europe. They reached the Champions League final. They led it. They had moments where they could have won it. But competing with the best and beating the best, that's a different thing. And the distance between those two things isn't talent. It's not tactics. It's not even luck, although luck played its part last night. It's something inside, something mental, something about how you behave when everything is on the line and the margin is 0. And Arsenal are not quite there yet. Now, I want to end on Gabriel, because I think everything I've just said, the Mosquera foul, the Madueke denial, the penalty order, the big game mentality question, none of it should land on him. He was the best player on the pitch for Arsenal for 120 minutes, 8 clearances in the first half, throwing himself in front of everything, running when he had nothing left. Every single thing you could ask of a defender in a European final. And then he was handed the penalty that decided it. I don't blame Gabriel. I can't. He didn't put himself on the list. He didn't write the plan. He was asked to do something by his manager in the biggest moment of his career, and he tried. And Marquinhos, the PSG captain, went over to console him straight after. That moment meant something. Even in victory, Marquinhos recognized what Gabriel had given, but Arteta has to look at himself after this. He has to ask, did I give my players the best possible chance of winning that shootout? Did I prepare this properly? Did I get the order right? Because Gabriel was in tears. And that picture, that image of Gabriel walking off that pitch, is what this final is going to be remembered for. Not the football, not the tactics, not even the referee. The tears of the man who gave everything and was asked to carry something that should never have been his to carry. So here's where I land. Arsenal did not deserve to lose this final. I believe that genuinely. But they also didn't do everything possible to win it. And there's a version of this, a version where the penalty order is right, where the big moments are seized, where the mental preparation matches the physical preparation, where Arsenal win that shootout comfortably. That version exists. And the job this summer is to find it. The Premier League title is real. The progress is real. This is a genuinely good team with a genuinely good manager. I'm not walking away from that. But the Champions League final showed us exactly where the gap is. Not in talent, not in system, in the space between competing at the highest level and actually winning at the highest level. That space is small, but it's real. So I'll leave you with this. Does Arteta deserve another chance at a Champions League final? Yes or no? Drop it below. Because I think the answer to that question tells you everything about what you believe this team can become. I'm Amelia. Thank you for being here. If this meant something to you, subscribe, share it, and I'll see you for the next one.